Alright, welcome to episode, probably the first and only, of let's tear some of this stuff apart because it needs to get off my bench. I have better things to do. I have a total of 3 power supplies, 2 12-volt power supplies, and 1 laptop power supply that do not work properly or reliably anymore. 2 of them are just dead-ish. One of them works for a short time and spazzes out with low voltage. Easiest way I've found to get these apart, some of them will have screws in the feet, under the feet. Some of them just are sonic welded or glued or clip. Best way I've found to get them apart, take a cold chisel and a hammer, set it up on its side, stick it in the seam, give it a couple good whacks, not on a folding table, but on something substantial like a concrete sidewalk or something. It starts to split, and then you can work your way around it with a screwdriver and get it open. There we go. I don't really care about these because, well, let's face it, they didn't work. This one, it looks like, in addition to the clippy things, it apparently had screws under the feet I didn't look in. Oh well, I'm not terribly concerned because we're here to tear it apart and see if there's anything obviously broken inside. This one, I plugged it in, put the meter on it. It was 1 to 2 volts instead of 12 volts. Not a terribly useful amount of power coming out of them. Let's see. Need to put that on a mode that will not interrupt anymore. Since it has some screws, I will pop those out just so that I can not have to deal with them. If I find the right screwdriver, I will pop them out. Today is the day before Thanksgiving. I was going to work on some stuff and I realized my bench was too much of a mess, so I'm trying to clean it up. Part of that, I need to get these to-do eventually things off. This is only the second YouTube video of anything I've done doing a project or anything, so we'll see how this goes. I know there's some really cool videos of people tearing stuff apart. BigClive.com is one that I especially enjoy watching. He does great analysis of why stuff stops working or is dangerous or whatever. I doubt this is going to be anywhere near as fun or entertaining. This is more of a see if there's anything obvious because it just needs to get out of my hair. Looks like it has these screws holding the heat sinks onto some regulators or other components. Can't see what they are yet. They're in there somewhere. So, more screws come out. And these screws appear to have nuts on the inside, so let's see if that's easy to remove. Well, it's certainly not being too cooperative. First glance, that nut looks like it's gotten awfully hot. No, it's not. It's gotten rusty. Why the heck is it rusty? These things have been sitting indoors. This particular one was a computer power supply that was sitting on the top shelf of a closet for a year, not quite a year, and it just sort of stopped supplying power. Fortunately, I had a random power supply which was close enough to use. I'd feel a lot better if that was, I need a little vice grip or something, because that is not cooperating. So, since the screw seems to be not cooperating, the head got torn up, so I don't care about tearing it up a little bit more. Wonder why it got rusted or dark or something. So shouldn't have that in a power supply. It's very tight. I don't know why it's very tight, if it got stripped or if it's just got gunk on it. See if I can get this apart. This probably isn't going to be a fixing it teardown. I think this is just going to be a destroying it and throwing it in the trash teardown. Maybe I'll keep these heat sinks if they look like they're useful potentially. Oh, cool, that one's got a little solder thing. Well, nothing a little bit of heat can't fix. So, get a little solder station out here, and light her up. If I actually cared about this, I wouldn't just be putting a torch on it. I'd get out a proper soldering iron. But the torch will be far more rapid for disassembly than getting a proper iron out and a proper thing. Okay, well, we've got down to part of it. Interesting stuff in there. Well, what the heck, let's work on the other heat sink in here. That's a nice piece of aluminum, I suppose. I'll put it over here with a CD-DVD burner thing that quit working, and one of my friends is going to use it for, I'm going to assume this screws the same way. One of my friends is going to use it for scrap parts or scrap metal or scrap something. Don't know yet, don't really care. I was going to throw it out, but I offered it to him as materials because why not? This heatsink on this side is attached to some other little component. I didn't even try and look to see what it was. Look at that in a minute. And this one is also soldered in on one spot. I guess that's for shielding. Kind of nice they bothered to do shielding. There we go. That is a mighty quick way to desolder. Probably not a very good way to desolder for this stuff, but as I say, this is a one-way trip. Alright, so that component is hot because I just soldered on it. That component is a B42YL. It also has FHF 7N50. I guess that's some sort of a regulator or switching part, something. This one is a 20H100C M221. Probably some sort of a regulator or something. Don't see any scorch marks. Don't see anything immediately obviously blown up. Well, that was somewhat anticlimactic. I guess I can take a couple of very, very careful readings just for the heck of it and see. Let's see if this was... I can't remember if the LED came on or not. Let's find out. I need to locate a power cord that I can safely plug and unplug or turn on and off without touching the board. Alright, so that end is unplugged, so I can plug this in. And let's see if the light comes on, or if the light doesn't come on. Well, it's pulsing. Click, 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 click. Yeah, that doesn't sound too good. Sounds a bit terminal. It's still pulsing, in fact. I can hear something audibly clicking or popping. Let's see here. Get the multimeter out. It's still popping, clicking away. A little bit slower. Let's see what this big fat capacitor's got voltage-wise. Yeah, it's still got 122 volts. Wouldn't want to poke my finger in there. The output side, here's a capacitor. Let's see what this is. Around 1 volt. Yeah, that's about what I was getting out of it. Something's clearly shot in there. What the heck it is, I'm afraid I'm not knowledgeable enough to know. Before I shock myself unplugging this, here we go. A little bit of a snap, and that capacitor's discharged. That was fun. While I'm at this, the output power leads on these are sometimes useful to have on hand. So as long as I'm in here, I will remove those. Stay. There we go. Mighty quick desoldering. And now I can put this lead in my parts bin drawer here. I've got a box of power supply stuff. If I can see which side it opens on here, and it can go in with the other assorted leads. Very good. And maybe I'll consider later taking off like the big capacitor and the other things. It seems like the connectors are maybe the most valuable thing on that one. This one is the brick that provides 12 volts. I opened it earlier, didn't see anything obviously wrong. It will provide power nicely for a short time, and then it starts dropping off in voltage. No clue why. See if we can... This one's glued together a lot more firmly. Don't see any signs of broken stuff in here. It's also a lot less apparent. I guess they must have soldered this together after they installed the heat sinks. Those are going to be a pain in the butt to take off. Nothing a little brute force can't fix. At this point, these are raw materials as far as I'm concerned. Lovely. Excuse me a moment. I don't want the dog to eat the screw, and I don't want to step on a hot soldering thing later. For this soldering surface, I use just a little Rubbermaid rolly bin and a $1 scrap of flooring tile, 12-inch flooring tile that I picked up at Lowe's. Works good, it's heat resistant, gives me a nice flat surface I can mess with stuff on. It's better than the folding table for stability, oddly enough. Even though these wobble, the table doesn't wobble quite as much, but these don't flex as much. Alright, there is one heat sink removed. Set it over here. Oh, that's cute. Here's you have a spot for some inductors. They just jumpered over it because then here's a capacitor. They just kind of left it out. Because, hey, why not, you know? This stuff probably all comes from China. Does it say on here? Made in China. 12 volt, 8 amp. I had a 12 volt, 10 amp one I didn't bother to take apart on a camera, but the stupid thing had blown itself up. The switching chip regulator part had actually decapped itself. I see this has some silicone glue stuff in the holding the rectifier on. See if the cold chisel will... That's not behaving, so let's see if I can just brute force on it. There we go. That's doing a little better. And this has a dot of solder. Yay. More dots of solder. Alright. See how much time is left on this camera. Lovely. 4 minutes to go. This camera only lets me record in 20-minute increments, so I have to watch that time. And here's what it's in, so I will... There we go. That's removed. That's not going to stay. Whatever. I can mess with that later. Oh. I wonder if this has anything to do with that. This capacitor seems a little bit loose. And if I look underneath here, it actually appears that on one side, it has a bad solder joint. It's not, I don't think I can get it into where the camera will see, but on one side it's got a bad solder joint. The other side, apparently it wasn't all the way seated in the board, so I actually tore the trace right off of the board on one of these output filtering capacitors. So this might have been still a perfectly good power supply, but that's not a good way to do it. So maybe I will, depending on how I feel after this, I might see about reassembling that and see if I can get it to behave. The fact it was dropping out, I'm not entirely sure why it was dropping out. It was running an Arduino and some LED lights. I also see there's some burny, corrody area there. I'm not sure why. Definitely, the filtering capacitor should not look like that. Let me see if I can get this to... I don't know if I can get that, but there we go. Now you can see certainly on there, that should not be like that. That's dancing all over that bad solder joint and the broken trace. Capacitors should not move like that. This one seems in there pretty good, but this one is not in there. It's not supposed to do that, not at all. So, that definitely explains why this was a problem. And I will be back in a few minutes with the next, taking apart the laptop power supply.